In 2022, stock buybacks hit a new record. The world's 1,200 largest public companies repurchased almost $1.3 trillion worth of stock, almost as much as they paid out in dividends. But buybacks have a mixed reputation. There's a belief that dividends are good and buybacks are bad. In 2021, for example, the left-leaning organization Americans for Financial Reform said that stock buybacks exacerbate the racial wealth gap, worsen economic inequality, and divert resources from the real economy. And it's not just political organizations who think this. In an interview with the Financial Times, a fund manager at Fidelity said that, as a shareholder, you feel like you never actually get the reward with buybacks. If the market is nonplussed by it as a shareholder, you're worse than square one, as the company has typically used up their cash. Another fund manager said, buybacks only create value when shares are cheap, and there are no better uses of that cash. But the debate around buybacks and dividends missed the core point. They're essentially the same thing. They're both methods to return capital to shareholders. And so a stock buyback is simply a dividend that gets reinvested into the stock instead of getting paid out into your brokerage account. And the math backs this up. Let's say you own 1% of a company that pays out a 5% dividend. The stock will fall to take account of that payment. So in that scenario, your equity ends up exactly the same as if you owned 1% of a company that bought back 5% of shares. In both cases, you're getting a 5% return of capital, and that's usually a good thing. With a stock buyback, your percentage ownership of the company increases. With a dividend, you receive cash. So a stock buyback is actually more tax efficient than a dividend, since you usually pay taxes on dividend income. There are other differences. Dividends might be more regular than buybacks, and of course, if your goal is simply to collect income, then dividend stocks might be a better choice. But remember, if you sell down the same portion of shares that you gain from a share buyback, then you're going to get the same amount of cash back that you would have got from a dividend payment. In other words, both stock buybacks and dividends are returning you cash. But there's another important point to be aware of. Over the past 10 years, dividend stocks have underperformed. The Vanguard Dividend Appreciation ETF, for example, has returned 186%, while the S&P 500 has returned 219%, and the Nasdaq 100 has done even better. It's just a fact that many of the best businesses choose to initiate stock buybacks instead of paying out dividends. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway is a prime example. The company has never paid a dividend, but it has initiated plenty of buybacks. That said, even Buffett admits that stock buybacks are not always a good idea. In recent years, there have been examples of companies like Bed Bath & Beyond who have repurchased shares despite being financially distressed. In 2022, the company spent $230 million on buybacks, despite closing stores and laying off workers at the same time. On some occasions, companies have taken on debt to finance stock buybacks. That's what Bed Bath & Beyond did in 2014. It took on about $2 billion of debt to finance buybacks, and that arguably set it on the path to a much weaker financial position. Moves like this defy reasonable logic, but again, this particular problem is to do with the management of the company, not the buyback itself. The point is, it's a big mistake to focus only on dividend stocks. Instead of focusing on the dividend, it's much better to focus on the strength of the business and its future prospects. There's certainly nothing inherently bad about a stock buyback. And if you found this useful, make sure to check out our website, overlookedalpha.com.